But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatterspodcast1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Just a question of taste with you, well, if you've gone sour, you want the world plus everything, but you won't work an hour. And now your questions are kept creeping, and you go and buy her flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. Just shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals on this fine Sunday evening as Liverpool look set to secure the Premiership title, 3-1 up with 35 minutes played this afternoon. But Newcastle were back in action yesterday and won comfortably against Ipswich and relegated them in due course as well. Newcastle winning the match by 3-0. And good game, Mitch. Ipswich made it difficult in those opening gambits and exchanges, and sending off, I guess, did change things. That extra man advantage. Newcastle got a penalty and never really looked back after that.
Well, but I think what was important was we didn't allow them, once they went down to 10 men, they really went into what looked like quite a solidly defensive formation. But it was like the Alamo at the end, really, especially towards the end of the first half, where it was like attack after attack after attack, and it was almost like a training game, an attack versus defence training game. And I think we did well to break them down, because that's the kind of situation where historically we haven't always done well. We haven't always found the way to unlock a door like that. And I think I'm glad we kept going the way we did. Both sides had to put up with a really poor referee, I've got to say, and we'll probably talk about that later on. But we managed to overcome all the various obstacles chucked in my way, and another solid result and another healthy bump on the goal difference, and you can't complain, can you?
No, it wasn't a penman's due, but it was a 3-0 win for Newcastle, and it was a professional job done against a team which bizarrely seemed to be giving it their best shot now when, the relegation was more or less secured before yesterday. I can never understand teams like that. They came up, they were gung-ho, and people are saying it's great to see a team coming into the Premier League, having a go and trying to attack teams, but ultimately, it's led to their downfall. And, had they defended like they defended in the last few games, they may well have had a chance of staying up.
Yeah, in fairness to Ipswich, they haven't had many Tongans this season, unlike Southampton and Leicester. They've been in most games and, obviously goals win games, but they might have just been one goal off the wrong result in many of the games. I know we nearly swore there. Battered them 4-0 at their place, and it could have been a lot more yesterday. And I'm actually struggling to remember a more one-sided game for Newcastle. I'm sure there's been many, but just to reiterate what Mitch was saying, for 80 minutes, it was defence versus attack. But what was good about it, it wasn't a gung-ho attack and throwing everything at it. It was controlled, it was composed, it was well thought out, and at no stage did I feel uncomfortable. I felt relaxed all the way through, and it was a case of it's a matter of time. And you didn't even think they were going to, get one on the breakaway or anything like that. it was Newcastle are going to win, and yeah, there was a bit of delay to get the first goal, and that can cause a little bit of anxiety. But for yesterday, for me, there was none at all. I knew we would win, and then once we got the first one, and then Dan Burn the second, it was just a case of how much could we score. And it was nice to be able to rotate the bench because you don't know when they're going to be needed. Like, as we said with Joe Linton missing yesterday, could that be him out for longer, or was that just the game? We won't know that till during the week. So it's important that people like Miley and Willock get minutes in the legs, and they did that. And for me, it was they did as you mentioned, Steve, professional job, and they really did.
Yeah, certainly did. Lots of comments coming in about the Ipswich fans. Ipswich fans were brilliant. We stayed and applauded them, and us shook hands with a few and wished them all the best whilst waiting on the number 63. And Muzza agrees. Have to say their fans were outstanding, doing olays when we were passing, singing about playing Coventry and Cardiff, and obviously the Bobby Robson song, mutual applause at the end. And it's a strange scenario, that, isn't it, really, because supporters so often sing against each other. There's some supporters can't stand each other, rivalry, etc., Mitch, but there is that Bobby Robson connection between Newcastle and Ipswich, which seems to have it's grown into a bit of a love affair between the sets of supporters.
Well,
which is nice. I think Sir Bobby would have approved.
I don't know what it is about Sir Bobby, but he has this amazing ability to reach across club and country division when it comes to football. The respect that man has in his legacy is second to none in the world game. And I think it says a hell of a lot when football fans have an ability to remember that the world's so much bigger than just the football. And there are some things that are universally worth recognising. And Sir Bobby Robson is one of those men. And it says a lot for him and his legacy. And it says a lot for the two sets of fans that were able to go at each other hammer and tongs for 90 minutes and then put it down and shake hands and have a share of beer and a story after, and that's the way it should be more often than not, really. But it gets lost a little bit, I think, in the modern game, and it's nice to see it not lost somewhere.
Yeah, it's good to see all the positive comments. So many videos as well, Stu, on Twitter today from Ipswich fans saying that they had such a great time and praising our supporters.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been like that with a few sets of fans over the last few years. And does it stem from Eddie Howe? Because for me, he is a Bobby Robson in the making. The way that he conducts himself. There's a genuine warmth and honesty, integrity about him, and that's testament to Bobby Robson, because we're all goats, and so a lot of people watching this. But there's been fans in that ground in both ends, home and away, who wouldn't have remembered or just have short memories of Bobby Robson at Newcastle, but not many would remember what Bobby Robson would have done at Ipswich. Even there would have been the majority of Ipswich fans wouldn't have seen a Bobby Robson Ipswich side, but he's steeped in their folklore. But it's not just the fact that he won things for them. It's as I said before, it's how he carried himself and the dignity that he shows. And if you look at the respect that someone like Mourinho has for him, the man who can't stop talking about himself, but as soon as Sir Bobby comes into the conversation, everything stops. And it is, and I'll repeat the word genuine, it is a genuine affection for him. And I'm sure that's why the two sets of fans respected each other in the right way. I don't think it would have been for Cookie or for Kieran Dyer or Titus Bramble or anything like that. Any other links that we've got between the two clubs, that's quite clearly it was for Bobby Robson, and rightly so. And it's nice that it can still be recognised after his death, and I'm sure it will for many years to come as well.
Yeah, certainly will. T-Tank says, I believe Sir Bobby Robson was a type of man that gives anything and understood the club and the area of every club he worked at. And Denise also said Ipswich on their social media said it was good to see Eddie back, which is true. Yeah, they did. I mean, everything about yesterday was positive, and the only negative, I guess, for Ipswich was that they dropped down into the Championship, but they knew they were going there anyway. Okay, lots of questions are coming in today, and we have had a few as well, which have been sent by social media. So I will come to those in due course. I will come to somebody in the chat first, and that's Stephen Howe, who says, should a Champions League place be allocated now to the Europa League winners? With no Champions League team dropping in, it makes a substandard competition. Hence, Man U and Spurs in the semis. I mean, it's the rules, isn't it, Mitch, that we'll start the season with? So the answer is yes. Should it happen is an opinion, which I guess we've all got an opinion about. And for me, I've always said the Champions League should simply be the champions, which would of course mean that Newcastle wouldn't be in it. But greed and money has changed the format of the competition to include so many other clubs now.
And UEFA at the time, remember, when they were coming up with these new formats, were battling the spectre of a Super League on the horizon. And so they were finding ways to appease certain clubs in Europe that, we'll find you other routes to make it easier for you to get access to the Champions League money. And so that's what all of this is about. It's about allowing clubs to fail, basically. You get a reward for failure. How bizarre is that? But that's effectively what UEFA have done with the new systems and the new formats. The new formats allow big teams to cock up multiple occasions and still progress and still have a chance in the shot at the Champions League. And so the whole European formats we always said they were going to be a mess and overly complicated. But I think this is one thing that kind of slipped under the radar a little bit, about allowing winners to go into bumping up the higher competitions, because it's. I think I saw somewhere we still potentially can have something like up to 10 teams in Europe next season, which is mad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, crazy to see that, that Manchester United and Spurs having abysmal seasons. Man U drew with Bournemouth today, just by the seat of their pants as well, equalising as usual in the 90-plus minutes. But Spurs, again, everything's in that kind of European pot, Both of them can't win it. One of them is going to finish the season with absolutely nothing and no European football. So, it's crazy, isn't it, Stu? This European awarding people, European Champions League places for not even being in the top 10.
Not to be fair, I don't really have an issue with it. It's always been there. And what they've done is taken the jeopardy of financially rewarding failure away when, if you're not qualified in the Champions League, you drop into the Europa League. And what I do have an issue with is if Man United do win it, which I suspect they won't, but if they did win it, and this is where it becomes a problem, not just with Newcastle, but nationally and internationally, like around Europe. Man United do win it, they get into the Champions League because they've won it. That was the rules at the start of the season, irrespective of where they finished in their league. What would happen is, let's hope that we're in the Champions League, they're in the Champions League, and our results are identical to theirs. We get dispatched at the same stage with the same results. They'll end up with nearly twice as much money as us. And that's the bit that's wrong. It's the distribution of money. Now, if we go back not so long in the past, over the last 10 years, Seville were the Europa Cup specialists under Unai Emery, weren't they? And they would win it, which meant they could qualify for the Champions League, and invariably they'd finish third in their group and get put back in the Europa League and then win it again. I think they won it like 4 years out of 6 or something like that. But for me, it allows the competition to grow, just like you get promotion and relegation in the national leagues. It's an incentive to ensure the top teams are trying. And if you've got, with the greatest of respect to Bodo Glimt, I'm sure many fans wouldn't be able to point to it on a map, even if they know it's in Norway. They wouldn't be able to say that's where their city is, or town, as it probably would be. But yeah, you do have some big teams with Tottenham, Man United, and Athletic Bilbao in the semi-finals. They're all pushing, knowing that the opportunity to get the Champions League next season, and it's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, is there, and it keeps the competition strong. And even if the conference, West Ham won it, and they got in effect promoted into the Europa for the following season. So I'm not too bothered about the fact that the Europa League gets it. I don't think would the question have been posed or been opposed as much had Man United not had a chance of actually winning the thing this year. They're probably sporty enough to do it, but really they shouldn't. And if they do, when they get the Champions League, that goes back to what I mentioned just there and what Denise has repeated there. It's how the money gets distributed, and that's what needs to change. They have to be able to say, this is a prize money at the offset, not you've accumulated so many points because you had a good team 10 years ago, so you get more money than someone who's, they're looking after we call ourselves legacy fans, but the legacy clubs in Europe, and it's all stemmed to sustain that. And that's the bit that has to get changed within European football, in my personal opinion.
Okay, plenty opinions coming in on those things. Just want to go back to the game yesterday. I managed to load the tweet. That's what I was trying to do there. Colin said, question for the professionals. Why wasn't the Ipswich keeper penalised for handball for continually kicking the ball from his hands outside the box? Where was the linesman? Now that ties in, I guess, with this as well. Should Bruno's goal have stood? I've watched it back a few times, and goalkeepers are, we know they're the protected breed. But it dovetails nicely into, Mitch, what you were discussing about 10 minutes ago, which was the officials yesterday. I have got to say, I personally felt that is the worst 3 officials we've had this season. We've had some bad ones, but the referee and his assistants yesterday were terrible, absolutely terrible. It was almost as if it was their first game. That's how bad it was. They had no confidence in their own ability to make a decision, and I just think it led to an absolute nightmare for both teams. They were bad for both teams, but that was an inept display by all officials yesterday, Mitch.
Yeah, man, and there was a distinct feeling round about the 40-minute mark, just before the penalty was given, that he'd actually lost control of the game at one point. I think the referee was desperate for half-time to come at one stage. I think he just genuinely seemed out of his depth. It was one of the poorest refereeing performances I've seen for a long time. Mainly because he didn't seem like he had any control or consistency. The keeper kicking beyond the box, I didn't see it too much from where we watched it. So I don't know if anybody else saw it that much, but that is something where I guess it depends on where the linesman deems the ball's leaving his hands. But he was obviously, sounds like he was trying to buy every single inch of the penalty box he possibly could. With regards to the cancelled goal, the only thing I could say when you watch it back, but again, you need VAR to see it really, is Bruno does look where the keeper is, but he doesn't really make a move into the keeper. And if you look at the example from the Chelsea game yesterday, where the Chelsea keeper took a player out and it was deemed an accidental decision, it was a collision, it was a football collision. Because it's right, quite rightly at times, players can't just teleport like bloody Nadia Popov out of the way of a situation. They can't just disappear. And I think, like I say, I think the only thing you could hold against Bruno was he did seem to have a look as to where the keeper was, but I don't think he made a particular move towards the keeper or anything like that. He just stood his ground. And the keeper was weak and pathetic, if you ask me. And even if you look at the reaction of their defenders around him, there was a couple of the defenders appealed, but a couple of them just looked resigned. They just didn't even bother appealing. So obviously the feeling amongst the players wasn't universal too. I thought it was weak keeping, but more so weak refereeing. But also, and I saw the comment about players doing certain things when they're on a yellow. you're quite right. I mean, Johnson knows he's on a yellow, however contentious that yellow might have been, and then does something which is, you just can't bear hug a player on the pitch. When you get to the realms of making fouls that would be fouls on a rugby pitch, you've got no excuse if you're on a yellow. You've given that referee, however bad that referee might be or inconsistent that referee might be, a decision to make. And if that decision goes against you, well, more fool you. But the referee wasn't consistent in how he did things. The lad that was playing left back must have took Murphy out at least 4 times with the same move, and he eventually booked him for one of them. But if that one was a foul, then the other 3 before were fouls. And I don't believe his booking was for persistent fouling. It was just baffling, some of the things he did. He allowed Delap and Burn to yap at each other to the point where they both ended up with booking. That seemed to be the only way he could resolve anything. He wasn't able to talk to the players or communicate with the players. But on that, Delap clattered into one of our players about 15 minutes after he was booked, and the referee just walked away and did nothing about it. They could have easily been down to 9 men. I think there were, and that falls on the players to be not so stupid. But at the same time, I pity players when they're dealing with a referee who's weak and who's inconsistent, because you genuinely don't know where you stand. And like I say, by about the 40th minute, the person that I think was most desperate for the half-time whistle was the referee himself.
Yeah, bad refereeing display that yesterday, Stu. One of the worst, and it's been poor all season, to be fair.
Yeah, it was. And I was just about to say that, Steve. It's not a one-off, is it? And it seems to me that referees rely too much on VAR now, and they're scared to make a decision. And I think the majority of fans wouldn't be bothered. Well, you would be if it goes against you. But the old phrase, he used to be indecisive, but he's not so sure now, certainly rings true with this. You'd want them to be like affirmative with a decision and believe he's made the right decision. And if it's wrong, it's wrong. But he's as if like they're pausing and hoping for a voice in the ear saying, just check this. And they're waiting for it rather than acting upon their own instincts. And regarding with Bruno, I know Mitch mentioned the Chelsea game, which I watched the Chelsea game before the Newcastle game. And then I ended up watching through very hazy eyes like that, the Aston Villa Crystal Palace game. But I'll come back to the Heat. If I talk about how I was after drinking all day yesterday, I'll tell you a story about him in a minute. But was the Chelsea keeper's foul worse than Pope's apparent misdemeanour against Crystal Palace? No, Pope, for me, made a legitimate challenge for the ball, yet he got penalised. The Chelsea keeper actually hit the Everton player and no penalty given. And that's what frustrates most people, I think. It's the inconsistency. And I think with the referee, he's got to react immediately, and he can only give a decision on what he sees. But VAR don't have that excuse. But regarding the Bruno non-penalty, I get what Mitch is saying. He did look, but of course he's going to look around. He's going to be away. He could be seen if he's offside. Is he going to get clattered? Because normally the keepers do come through you, don't they? And they will get protected. But anywhere else on the pitch, that was a foul on Bruno. Anywhere else on the pitch. And you know how I know I'm right? And I can be assertive with this, is at half-time, Gorilla Gloves asked the question, how was that not a foul on Bruno Guimaraes? So if you've got Gorilla Gloves who really cannot stand Newcastle and he doesn't even try to hide it, he's perplexed about how that wasn't a penalty, then it sort of tells you that it was a penalty. I'll finish off the Heat story before we go back to Mitch. He got invited by some contractors or something through his work anyway. He was in the corporate. And last time he was in corporate, he was very, very drunk, to quote a fast show phrase. So I wished him well yesterday as he went off on his little tunnels. A bit of a lightweight. He only had 2 Jaeger bombs before he started, not the compulsory 6 as he should be having. But speaking today, I left him. Of course, he's going to be sleeping it off and he'd have a hangover, etc. So I left it till this afternoon to call him, and he was regaling. He thinks he had a great time, and I think I got home safe. And there was a lot of thought going on, but nothing to be concise. So I says, well, where did you go after the game? And he said, you know what? I didn't even know till this morning. I had to check my phone for photographs to see which bars I've been into. So that tells you how much someone's had to drink. And I thought, that's not how it should be. You should be able to control yourself better than that. It's a bad example to give to the children. So obviously myself and Dr. Neil being professionals would never get in such a state. So very bad job, Mr. Heat. Very bad job, referees, but good job to Newcastle. Because if you look at the fouls that were going in on Willock and Tyne, players know. Player knows if someone's done someone on purpose. You know, we're playing the game ourselves at a much lower level, but you know if someone's going to do you, not just to trip you up, not just a little technical foul, but if they went nasty in and there was a look of disgust, you wouldn't have seen it being at the match, Steve, but where the cameras that we had from Tyne, where and one of the fouls at him, he was like, what are you doing? You know, you shouldn't even contemplate that sort of challenge. And some of the ones that went in on Willock, I know it's been reported elsewhere that those were set up for Joe Linton, and I think it was just to ruffle fellas. But the reaction of the players, you can always tell if it's an actual penalty, if it's an actual foul, if it was over the top, you know. And yesterday highlighted that, and as they both quite rightly said, the referee didn't have control of the game. He lost control of the game. And at no time did it look like he was going to regain control of the game. And I think he was an epitome of what's happening with referees now. They're relying too much on VAR, and it's like a pass the buck mentality rather than take responsibility for it. And there's very few referees that will stand by their decisions. They want the game to be refereed outside of the pitch rather than that's their job on the pitch. And that's why sometimes they get spoken to or they get treated with a lack of respect, because they're not doing anything to warrant it. That's just my thought on the referee yesterday.
Okay, good stuff. Let's move on to the players from yesterday. Big shout out to the Heat, by the way. He has sent me a picture for the day I met on Friday. So not only did he have a good day out, but he did meet a celebrity. So we'll feature that on Friday. Kieran
He didn't
Trippier,
even know that till this morning, Steve, by the way, or this afternoon.
Yeah, I haven't heard your story now. Yes, that was apparent. Kieran Trippier, lads, there's his stats from yesterday. Mitch, 10 out of 10 performance, somebody's just said in the chat. Look at that, 99 minutes played, 2 assists, 0 times dribbled past, 113 passes completed, 3 big chances created, 5 ground duels won, clean sheet, man of the match, a simply breathtaking performance. And a few months back, we were all questioning whether, we should maybe, sell him and put him on the transfer list, do a deal to help PSR. And everybody was talking about that. There's not one person saying we should keep him. So for me, great performance out again from him yesterday.
The way it transpired, he spent most of the second half playing as a secondary right winger. The way he interacted with Murphy to take advantage of the space out wide, because that was the key to breaking them down, was manipulating the ball into the wide positions as quickly as possible and making the most of the opportunity of 2-on-1s outside. And I think yes, he does.
I'm not even disputing that. It was really good to see him, and it really is good to see him back at his best. He's the kind of player who he plays with his heart on his sleeve. I think he would admit he's probably went through a time where he wasn't in the best of form. I think his personal life was probably influencing that as much as anything else. And you've got to remember, the players are people, not robots. They do get affected by all sorts of things that affect me, you, and everybody else in our lives. But I think we've seen in the last few months not just a return to form as a player, but return to form as a leader on the pitch and as an individual. Being a co-captain almost alongside Bruno and helping him with all of that, and the way they acted at Wembley,
to make sure Lascelles was involved as well. You know, these things all matter. And when you get the best out of somebody like that, you can see why he was one of the first people that Howe wanted in. When he was looking at sort of turning the ship around when we were bottom of the league and looking to bring him through. And then, you know, you remember his behaviour after he got the foot injury. When he got the foot injury, he still turned up with his crutch and was in the dressing room and on the touchline and doing everything he could as an individual to bring others on. And when you see how delighted he is for other individuals when things go right for them, like Jacob Murphy, like Will Osula, like Dan Burn, you know, he sees, you see the best of him as a person. And I think all of this and more there's part of me also reminds me a little bit like when Barry Venison came to the club. And you start to look back and think, good God, what would he like if we'd had him at his heyday? What would he have been like when he was in his prime? You know? But he needs... I cannot praise the lad enough, because I certainly had him on a transfer list at some stage. And for him not just to come back as a player, but as a person who he has, is highly commendable.
Yeah, Trippier obviously had his own issues away from football. We discussed that last week, Stu. But it's, you know, that performance yesterday was superb. I mean, it was a masterclass in defending. And somebody again just made the comment there in the chat about his timing for headers is exemplary.
This may sound a bit controversial, but I don't think he was our man of the match yesterday. I think he had an easy game because, especially after they went down to 10, there was no attacking intent from Ipswich at all. And what it did do, it allowed Trippier to do what he's very capable of. Irrespective of his age, he's very composed on the ball. He's a good passer of the ball. He's a good leader of the team, and he can keep things composed on the pitch. You know, I noticed that yesterday. There was him and Denali, Dan Burn. There was no panicking. But for me, this might not be popular tomorrow night, but I thought our best player, especially in the first half, was Jacob Murphy. I was critical of him last week because he went through a spell where, especially against Aston Villa, where he became really a bit anonymous. But he had the bit between his teeth yesterday. Now, that could be with Gordon getting back to full fitness and Harvey Barnes hitting his straps thinking, hang on, maybe I'm not a shoe-in every week now. But he put in so many dangerous balls and quite easily could have set up 3 or 4 goals in the first half alone. And he took the game to him and he was wanting to take his player on. But that's not taken away from Trippier saying he's not good. But Trippier's performance yesterday, for me, was reminiscent of his performances he gave us in his first 18 months here. And it was like a revert back to the Trippier that we first signed, not the one that we've had for the second 18 months, if that makes sense, who's been a bit inconsistent. And his performance this week to last week is chalk and cheese. And credit to him, he played really, really well. But sometimes I think we can be too over the top with praise. We'll build people up and then want to knock them down. But he did everything that he had to do really, really well. So I'm not saying he had a bad game by no stretch of the imagination. Is that the case? But I've seen and read a lot of reports. Like, I think 10 out of 10 is stretching it a bit, to be honest. He had a very good game, and hopefully he remains fit. As we know, he's touching 35 this year, and he's got an extra year on his contract. Do we sell him? I think the pendulum swung, as Mitch just mentioned there. More the people said, no, we'll keep him, because if whichever form of European football we've got next season, if we do have extended runs in domestic cups as well, we're going to play the thick end of 60 games next year, and you can't rely on one person to do that. So if it is Livramento who's going to be the starting right back, and he plays 40 games and Trippier was to play 20 games, I've got no qualms with that. No qualms at all. But as a club moving forward and to get to where we really want to, we've got an aging backline that needs to be addressed quickly. And that's my concern for next week, because Brighton attack with pace and it'll be a different type of game altogether. for Trippier and Shaw and Burns. So that's why it was pleased to see Botman make a return as well. Sorry to bring Botman in when we talk about Trippier, but at the same time, he had an exceptional game. But I think 10 out of 10, I think people are getting a bit carried away with it.
Yeah, I think Trippier's had some great games. I think he's been a steady 7, 8 out of 10 in this little run that we had, including the cup final. And since then he's just been leading by example. Trippier's always been a good player, and I mean he had that blip. Last season was difficult, as we know, and just finishing in a lower league position, not getting Europe, going out of the cups as we did. And unfortunately for Trippier, some of his mistakes were in those kind of big games where we lost either valuable points or dipped out of cups. So I think that was the thing. It almost enhanced the fall from grace, if you want to call it that, for Trippier amongst some of the supporters. And of course, we all knew that there was something going on in his private life. And on top of that spat with a fan as well. All those little things added up, and throw into the mix Newcastle fans on social media, and it ends up being a nightmare. But he's resurrected, put it that way. I thought he was great. I didn't really pick out a man of the match, I've got to be perfectly honest, yesterday. And when I got in, I saw people going on about Trippier, and I thought, well, he didn't stand out for me as the man of the match. I thought he had another good game. And if I was pushed to say who had a decent game yesterday, I would be struggling. Nobody stood out as a real man of the match for me. I thought everyone did their job, but there's nobody who stood out and thought, oh, he had an excellent game. But so maybe that's why Trippier got picked. Dan Burn, apart from that one loose pass early doors, I thought Dan Burn was really good as well. But yeah, anyway, it's done. We got 3 points. That's the most important thing. We had another question on Twitter from Phil Scott. Question for the professionals. Given that the talk is for a new central defender, goalkeeper, striker, right-sided forward, how would you rank them from most to least essential? Good question, Phil. Thanks for that. Most essential. Well, I'll go first because I don't often talk. People often say you should talk more, Steve. Centre forward for me is essential, because we can't go through another season relying on Alexander Isak, and genuinely we need another centre forward. I think so that would be me. That would be number one priority for me. Number two priority, I would go right-sided forward. Third priority would be the central defender. And fourth priority would be the goalkeeper. I genuinely think we could go through next season with Nick Pope and Dubravka and the supporting cast of Chakademus and Pliers and John Ruddy, who was on the bench again yesterday, and Mark and Gillespie as well. I don't think, even though I know that Trafford, everyone's saying it's almost a done deal, but that would be my order, Mitch. What about you?
I think I'd probably run with a very similar order. Maybe swap the right-sided forward and striker around, but because I personally think they'll go for a player who has a mix of skill sets, who could play as a right-sided option or could play as a central option if needs be, and kill two birds with one stone. But no, I think pretty close to your assessment as well. I think they've tied Shaw down to an extension. But he's obviously not going to get a full season out of him as he's getting older. And I think as somebody of the calibre of Botman, who could play on the right-hand side with Botman on the left-hand side, is sort of what transitional from Fabian Shaw and Dan Burn. But as a four, that would be an amazing set of options. And I think something that's obviously on the cards to address. So, yeah, not too dissimilar to you, mate.
All right, Stu.
I concur with my esteemed colleague. I think the right winger, hybrid centre forward, the ones that we've been linked with, when we was top of the list, Jonathan David, they can both do that role where they will play right wing. They can cover in the middle. We know Gordon can cover in the middle. It's quite clear Isak, we can't expect him to play every game and maybe rely too much on him. But for me, that's a priority, the right winger. Then I honestly think it is the centre half for the reason I gave just before. Because even with everyone fit, if we had a full complement of centre halves, So you've still got Dan, Burns, Shaw, and then the Cells, Kraft, all of them over 30. All the ones that can play there. And Botman is the standalone. We do need not just a fast one, but a cultured one. Someone who will play well with Botman going forward. And so for me, it has to be a right winger, then a centre half. And if the right winger can cover centre forward, fine. Because you see people raving about Osula, etc. And is he the finished article? We scored the best of 3 goals yesterday, but he come on and look well.
We'll come on to Osula because that's my next topic.
Okay. But he can cover at centre forward. He can cover a right winger. Is he at the level that we want at the moment? Possibly not. But look at Lewis Hall, how he progressed from one season to the next. You know, so to answer the question, my order would be the right wing who could play centre forward if necessary, then a centre back. And you know, if ifs and buts and everything else, if my granny had wheels, should be a bike. But if Pope could kick the ball, he's one of the best shot stoppers in the league, but he can't. And because of that reason, the defence has to come back a bit more, which invites more attacks, which in turn, especially away from home, you can see teams running through us because it creates a bigger gap than what is necessary. So a goalkeeper would probably be third choice. And I think if they do get the right winger, pardon the puns with the stuttering there, I don't think there's a desperate need to have a out-and-out centre forward as cover. And that's including Wilson no longer being with the club. As I said, if we had like an Mbemo type there, we've got Gordon there, Isak there, and possibly Osula there. There's 4 people that could literally do the job as long as it wasn't a long-term injury to Isak. Enough to rest and rotate, and then we can look to strengthen the squad depth more elsewhere. That's just how I would look at it.
Okay, we are halfway through the show. Time for the ads. Big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel, UK Coach Holidays. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels, no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the technical side of things. And if you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can find us on Sport Social Podcast Network. We're also available on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to support the channel, then hit the subscribe button. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the like button, which is the thumb underneath this video, and click share to your social media. You could also take out a monthly membership or an annual membership at nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. For the lifetime membership, you can pay £25 and get a pen, a beer mat, a fridge magnet, a badge and a keyring and your membership card and entry into the monthly draw. Some events coming up: 27th of June 2025, the end of season party. Beresford, Howie and Watson will be at the Tyneside Irish Centre with Joe Allen in aid of North Tyneside Age UK. You can get your tickets for that one from nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk or from Woucher. No Covers takes place at the Clooney. That's on the 29th of June, midday till 3:45, and tickets are £10 from theclooney.com or newcastlelegends.com. Northern Horizon, a Blake 7 convention, takes place on the 9th of August, 10 till 4 at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Come and meet some of the cast and crew in aid of Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. Tickets from nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. An evening with Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle takes place on Friday, the 23rd of January 2026 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. You can get tickets from the box office 0844 249 1000 or from tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. And Bad Manners are back in the Northeast at the O2 City Hall, Friday, the 30th of January 2026. Tickets from ticketmaster.co.uk. And we have copies of The Entertainer's book, signed by Les Ferdinand, available from nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. Okay, welcome back to the professionals on this Sunday evening. Liverpool still leading by 3-1, an hour on the clock. Man City 2-0 up in the FA Cup semi-final, looking like Man City will take on Crystal Palace in the FA Cup final this season. And Steve Bennett has just sent us a message on WhatsApp. He says, yes, Steve, please talk more, but less singing. Thanks, Steve. So it means my last subject, which is about Will Osula, will start like this. Da 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 da. Osula. There we go. That one's for you, Steve Bennett. And can I just say happy birthday to Arthur and George Bainbridge, who are in. I know one of the Bainbridges in the chat tonight. Happy birthday, lads. They happy birthday. Twins and celebrating their birthday today. So Osula finally broke his Premier League duck, Mitch, and it was a good goal. Somebody reminded me of Andy Carroll's goal. There it is, John Askew. Andy Carroll's header at Stoke 16 years ago when we got relegated. He says Osula's effort brought it all back. What a header. It was very Andy Carroll-like. It was a leaping header. It was a great ball in by Trippier. And yeah, I mean, great way to open your account. And I just keep remembering Tyndall's press conference a couple of weeks ago where he said he reminds me of a young Callum Wilson. So clearly, and listening to some of the players yesterday, you know, talking about his goal, Dan Burn was quite funny. Actually said, I'm not sure if he meant it, but clearly his banter with him. He's clearly liked in the dressing room, and you know, he's a work in progress, Mitch.
Yes. And I think the two words to remember when we're talking about Osula and people wanting them in the side, etc., is to think what he did with a certain young left back, and we were all claiming that he should be in the team, and he waited and he waited and he waited and he put him in when the time was right, and you know, and it's like Lewis all over again. For me, I think the manager will put Osula in, and he mentioned him in the post-match press conference yesterday that he made a point that he was playing him out wide, which is different to the way he really wants to play, and the skill set's a little different. But I thought it was a great header from a standing leap. He rose above everybody else. I think he's one of these players who's deceptive. He's 6'3", bordering on 6'4", but doesn't necessarily look at it all the time until he's standing next to some of the players. And I thought he did really well to direct the header back in the direction it came from. It was a class header for sure. And then he looked dangerous for the remaining 5 minutes that he was on to the end of the game. And I think about his performance against Birmingham, where he got lumps kicked out of him all game. And kept going, and the enthusiasm was there, and again got his reward in that game too. So I think we just have to be patient with him, let him develop. He's certainly appreciated in the dressing room. There's no doubt about that, and I think that says a lot for the kid. He's more of a vibe than a person, it seems, but everybody seems really happy for him, and that is definitely the kind of love you want in the dressing room.
Yeah, he does look a bit hyper, Stu. I think that's probably
hyper. He looks like he's had all the blue Smarties.
It's the exuberance of youth, I would say. But Trippier did go over to tell him to calm down. I did see that as well. Liverpool 4-1 up. Salah's got his obligatory goal. But yeah, Stu, Osula. Thoughts on Will Osula?
I was going to say, to quote Mitch there, that he does look like he's had all the blue smarties, but he's obviously well liked. He's infectious. You've seen how every player ran to him when he scored, and they're all happy for him. And it shows that the togetherness and the camaraderie. And I think they appreciate the work he's put in behind the scenes. We only see the cameo roles, 10, sometimes less minutes of most games when he does get a run out. And it's hard to impress in that time. And it was the goal of the game. I mean, not that there was much competition for the best goal of the game, but it was a very, very good header. And it's one of those when the ball come across, and it was a cracking delivery by Trippier. Had he headed it over, I don't think anyone would have said, "Oh, well, you should have put that away." It was a less than a 50% chance for him to score, and he put it away well. So you can see that there is tweaks to him, and he's by no stretch of the imagination the finished article. But because of the way the players were with him, it shows to me that he is doing the work. He is doing what's asked of him, and he's willing to do it. He's not complaining, and he seems to be fun. And I know what you talked about Trippier there and how professional he is, and he's. But that's what he needs. He needs someone like that. Not so much a father figure, but a senior pro saying, "Right, you've done that. Now get back. You've got your other chores to do," sort of thing. And if you start looking since this new regime's taken over, we haven't made many mistakes in the transfer market, and some have come to the boil quicker than others. Like Trippier himself, he hit the ground running, didn't he? And then we've talked about Lewis Hall. How it took him a while, and you've got everyone in between, the players who are capable of scoring straight away or playing well straight away, like the Botmans, the Isaks. Even Tonali didn't take away his first game, but he wasn't exceptional for the first part, but now we know because he had the impending ban hanging over him. But with the work that goes on behind the scenes, the future is bright for someone like Osula, and I just hope that he gets to the stage where he fulfills his potential. But if you want to be really harsh and take out the emotion of it, if he doesn't succeed with us, it'll be a profit on the PSR. And sorry if anyone, because everyone likes his song and things like that, he's never going to be as good as Isak, but he could be a capable understudy in the years to come.
Yeah, I think Newcastle will persevere with Osula. I don't think they'll sell him. I think he's looking the part, slowly but surely. And he is young. I know people say he's not young, but he is still young. And he's got hopefully all of his career ahead of him. And when you hear Tyndall compare him to Callum Wilson, I think that bodes well for the future. But they've got to nurture him, and certainly if there is a bit of the devil in him, they need to control that as well. He's that's the hard part, I guess. On the pitch is easy for Eddie Howe. Off the pitch, got to keep him on a leash, I think, to a degree. But let's see how things go. Keeping on the centre forwards side of things, Chip has asked earlier. Question for the lads: do you think Isak is really fully fit? It's a strange situation because I guess a lot of the best centre forwards, Mitch, you don't notice them in a game, and then boom, they score goals. So, Ian Rush is probably a prime example. Didn't do a great deal during games, but he knew where the back of the net was, and he often found it. And whether it was a penalty or a 6-yarder or a 20-yard strike, he usually got his goal a game, and he's just become Newcastle's top goal scorer again this season. 22 goals, I think it is. And I think that's the most Premier League goals in a season since Alan Shearer in 2003, 2004. So he's breaking all kinds of records held by our living legend.
Yeah, and I think I know why people are asking this, because he seems to be going through a phase where the goals aren't coming as easily as they were. Not so long ago, everything he touched seemed to end in the back of the net. Now, he actually seems to be missing easy chances and putting the more difficult ones away sometimes. And if he isn't fully fit, we don't have, I guess, the luxury to give him a bit more time off. I don't believe he's carrying an injury as such. I just think he's a little bit out of form. And that's natural with players. It just doesn't look as easy for him as it did, say, 5 or 6 games ago. But that's players go through patches like that, and he's still getting goals. And I think for me, that's the measure of it. He's still getting in the positions to have opportunities. I think if that had dried up, that's more of a concern. He's getting the opportunities still. He just doesn't quite look as sharp. But whether that equates to fitness or not, I don't know.
It's coincided with Barnes coming in. Barnes wants them goals, which is not a bad thing, says Ian. Is it something as simple as that, do you think? 5-1 to Liverpool, by the way. Mo Salah with his second goal of the game.
No, Steve, I mentioned it last week on a couple of occasions. I think he's about 80% fit. But yeah, if you know the old story when you've got a husband and wife, and the husband's trying to explain the wife about the offside trap and using the salt and pepper pots and stuff like that. There was something similar regarding Isak yesterday with me and Mrs. P when we were watching the game. And I was like, look, they're playing a team that are sitting so deep, he's not allowed space. And he, because he's such a threat, and as you mentioned there, he can come alive at any moment. And we all know what he's capable of doing. He can skin anyone as the person who apparently has never been beaten by a centre forward in his life, Van Dijk, can testify that he's capable of beating anyone with a bit of skill, a bit of pace, a quick feet, shooting earlier than what's expected. And for me, Isak is a genuine world-class player, and we're grateful to have him. But what I was pointing out yesterday is that sitting that deep, they're nullifying his space. But I did watch him closely because of the conversation me and Mrs. P were having. And I says, but look, everywhere he goes, there's 2 or 3 players, which allows space for other players. And as the game grew on, we got more and more players into positions that were free, and that allowed us to get their space, especially down the wings, because their idea was let's block. And Isak, I thought, was very clever. He didn't then play off the last man. He started coming deeper, which allowed space behind them for the if you look at how many balls were put through, especially on the right-hand side, for Murphy to run onto, because the last few weeks it's all been about Liverpool running down the wing, taking a defender with him, allowing Barnes to cut in, or if he's not there, he can go that way. But it created a lot more space on the right with Isak coming a bit deeper and then turning and going in and hoping to get a ball. So then he's got a 1 in 3 chance of getting the ball. But when we're playing one of the better teams who are pushing us rather than sitting back saying, try and break us down, we're going to sit here. And a 0-0 is a fantastic result for us. He gets more space, and when he gets the space, he gets exposed. But I think it's testament and credit to James Bunt, who's allowing them to manage the minutes, and invariably he gets taken off every game now. But I'm grateful for that, because you see his name on that team sheet, and if you're a defender, you're thinking, oh God, you know you're in for a hard time. And if Isak isn't 100% fit or given a 10 out of 10 performance, his 7 or 8 out of 10, as we talked about last week, his 80% is better than anything we've got at 100%. And I still think he's an integral part of the team. And sometimes we as fans can become complacent because he's delivered so many exceptional performances and scored so many superb goals that every time he gets the ball, we expect the net to bulge. And there isn't a striker in the world that's capable of doing that. But it gets highlighted, and he's frustrated. He's a goal scorer, and I like that. I like the fact that he's greedy. And when we beat Man United 4, he hadn't scored, and then he got the last one against Palace, you could see the relief. Even when the goals were going in, he was running across, congratulating the players, but he was thinking, I wish that was me. I wish that was me. And that's what we want from our centre forward. But he is, as I said, he's a bona fide superstar. I don't think he's fully fit, but his mere presence on the pitch is more than enough. and he's justified and deserves the respect he gets from the defenders. And if he's occupying two of them, we now have the confidence going forward with the other players where the spaces are getting exposed. And I think the team are playing that way purposely, as I mentioned, using the wingers, the way that Murphy kept finding the space, the cut in between, because the other centre-half was coming on to Isak to make it two. That left the gap to hit it between the centre-half and the full-back. And Isak, even if he's not playing at his best, is doing more than enough for the team. Of course, he wants to score the goals. We all want him to score the goals. But there's 4 games left and he's not finished. It'd be very nice for him to get over 25 goals for the season in the Premier League, and I'm sure he's more than capable of doing it.
And John asked earlier, I thought Delap was excellent yesterday. If he signed, he could play striker with Isak as a number 10 type role. It could be excellent, but would Eddie be open to it? Any thoughts? I mean, he's going to have plenty of suitors. I got to see him up close and personal, Mitch. Probably not the best game to judge Delap, to be perfectly honest. Hilarious interchange at one point between him and Dan Burn on a corner, pushing and shoving for about what seemed an eternity. Both players eventually got booked and then continued to do it again after the referee had booked them. But yeah, I mean, Delap, 12 goals, 12 of Ipswich's 32 goals this season. He's young, he's raw. He's got certainly a release clause, which Newcastle could be tempted by. Is he the kind of player that Newcastle would, potentially go for, do you think?
Ticks many boxes, doesn't he? And you put his goals into context in a team that's been fighting relegation effectively all season. That's not a bad haul. And by all accounts, he's played very well and showed a lot of really good attributes and professional attributes through the season. And in current prices, £30 million for a striker like that does seem to be value. And so he seems to be the kind of player that we'd be in the mix for, I would have thought. Is he to play with Isak, or is he to be an alternative? I think it would be as an alternative. I think Isak very much now is our prime main striker and will remain so, and I don't see any shift to moving him to a slightly different role anytime soon.
Yeah,
and I don't see why we would. But it's clear we do need alternatives. We do need people who can give other options different looks, but also take some of the minutes out of his legs. So he certainly Delap's the kind of player you would hope we would be in the mix for. Because it also, in terms of budget and PSR, that 30 million seems to be a hell of a signing.
Yeah, Delap, and I mean, I know we don't like speculating on here, but it's a question that's been asked by John Askew, Stu. For me, and Boomer's been linked. Hoyson at Bournemouth? It's another one linked with Newcastle. Another. Release Cree, the centre half, around about 30 million, and now, of course, Delap is also potentially somebody who could be on the move because of Ipswich dropping into the Championship. Is that? Did you see much, from him yesterday, and you thought, yeah, he could fit into Newcastle United's team?
I feel like I'm being a bit bar humbug today, but I wasn't overly impressed with him. I wasn't overly impressed with him. In his defence, he wasn't given much opportunity to excel. But what I've seen, if you look at what young Clive are doing at Bournemouth against us, who had the better game. Now, I'm not saying I'd rather have him over him, but I don't get this. Because we're linked with him, we start looking at them with rose-tinted glasses. He's a strong lad, but is he an Isak replacement? Not a chance. But if I'm using the same theory or methodology as I did with Trippier and Livramento, 40 games, 20 games, then yeah, that would work. But in today's market, he is fantastic value at £30 million. But would he be willing to come to Newcastle to be the number 2? Because I can't think of a forward in the world that would be better in our system than Alexander Isak, that we could afford to put in that system, and then say, right, let's move Isak to the left. Well, that takes out Gordon or Bond. Or let's move him to, we're moving for the sake of moving. And for me, that's not smart transfer money. That's just throwing good money after bad. And look how long it took us to replace Shearer. 20 plus years now until Isak's come in, before we've had someone that's a number 9 that's going to guarantee you 20, 25 goals a season. He should be coveted. He should be wrapped in cotton wool, as I'm sure they are doing. And James Bunce, I'm sure, is having more of a say if Isak starts than what Eddie Howe does. And they're managing his minutes to make sure that he can expose himself or perform to the best of whatever ability he's got physically. But for Delap, I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's a decent player in a bad team. But could he come into our team and improve it? I don't think so. Could he improve the squad? Yeah, sure. But would he want to become a squad member with us? And that's the difference now. We've moved on. I was speaking to Robbie One Punch earlier, and we're talking about possible ins and outs. And there was a talk of Sean Longstaff possibly leaving 12 to 15 million. And he used the phrase that Newcastle went past the likes of Sean Longstaff being in the team now. And he has been 100% committed in every game he's played for us. But it's one of those sad things in life where things do move on and progress. And the club's progressed past the likes of Sean Longstaff being a starter for Newcastle United. As much as I'm appreciative of everything he's done, would Delap be a starter for Newcastle United? No. And if you're going to the transfer talks and the rumour of Man United and the likes, would he go to Old Trafford and start the game? Yes. Would he come to us and be number 2 in a better squad? You've got to start thinking strikers are greedy people, aren't they? And they want goals. So if we get him, fantastic. I'm not against him at all, but I think people are going a bit overboard because we're linked with him, saying he had an excellent game yesterday. I didn't think he did.
Yeah, I'd go for Jonathan David. Will be my first choice as a forward. We're going to have a lot of competition in the market, which is why Champions League football is so important for Newcastle, because that will be a huge attraction. Mozza in the chat was just mentioning the fact that the game at Anfield keeps getting delayed by balloons blown onto the pitch, and Spurs players having to stop and stamp on balloons, and they've just stamped on the trophy, the silver trophy balloon that's come on. Joe Walker, thanks for this, mate. He's just sent us this tweet from Tony Blueblood, who's clearly an Everton fan. He says, my mates just text me there. He bought 10,000 blue flares, and he spent the last 4 weeks taking the blue labels off them and putting red labels on them. I hope he sells the lot. Well, he clearly sold some, because the video that Joe sent us is as follows. Absolutely priceless, absolutely priceless.
That's next level pettiness, and I love it.
We were talking about how Newcastle and Ipswich fans get on, but to see somebody do that in Liverpool is absolutely outstanding. Yeah, absolutely fantastic, that T-Tank. Thank you for that, Joe. That's made everybody laugh in the chat, I'm sure. Question for the panel from Barry. Why aren't we mentioning foreign player signings? Suddenly everyone we are after is English Premier League based. Yet where did we get our best players from? Isak, Bruno, Botman, Tonali. It's because the papers decide and the media decides who you've been linked with, Mitch, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think
the agents.
It's quite clear that we've moved away from the club we used to be, which looked like a sieve, and it started mainly in reception at St James's Park when agents were coming into town to talk. I think the whole way we do business is very different now. And I don't think much gets out. I don't think we'd get any big clues about what's happening outside of England. And I think the journalists these days are just bloody lazy. They just look at the Premier League as the be-all and end-all. And it's not worth discussing players outside of that when it's quite clear there's value to be had by bringing players in from other countries. I mean, you wouldn't sniff at the money we paid for Tonali at the moment, would you?
No, definitely not. I mean, foreign players, it's down to the scouting, isn't it, Stu? And, I'm sure Mitchell's been scouting. We've talked a little bit on here over the last couple of weeks about, Mitchell, he was the one who did the deal for Leipzig for Kuna. From Wolves, another player that's been linked with Newcastle. But Newcastle, I'm sure, will have their scouts all over the world looking at different players and not just people from the English Premier League.
Yeah, I rudely interjected there when Mitch was speaking and I shout with the agents, because that's where they come from. They'll link Newcastle United with it, because I think it's common knowledge in the market now that we're actually able to spend money this transfer window in comparison to the last three. So it's an easy way to get more interest. Oh, Newcastle are doing well. They're interested and they've got money and we'll go for them. But you have to look at how Eddie plays the team, how the system he has. And some of the players are linked to us have got no chance of fitting into that team. So would they improve the squad? Yes. But would they improve the team? No. And there's urban myths all around. Like, if you remember, Eddie Howe will only buy players from Bournemouth. We've only got one, and that was Lloyd Kelly, and we didn't buy him. He was a free. So the other players were already there before he got there, with like Ryan Fraser's and Matt Ritchie's and Callum Wilson's. Also, he only buys English. Well, the question that we're answering now referenced Tonali, Bruno, who else was it? Botman, etc. Isak. They're not English as far as I can understand. I know English like to claim everything, but they can't claim their nationalities either. Those days are gone by, long gone. So we're in a position now where we're getting into footy season, where we are fair game, and we always will be until we start dominating the league in a way that's hopefully we do, in a way that Man City did, Man United before them, Liverpool before them. And we've been through it already this season. For months, we were linked. Arsenal were linked to it. It was a foregone conclusion Isak was going there. And now that's died down. Arsenal don't want him anymore. Really? Every single player, every single member of that Arsenal board would walk on their hands to St. James's Park if there was an indication that we would sell him for a price that they were willing to pay or capable of paying. They can't afford him, and he's staying where he is, and they've accepted that. So now the press are saying, no, he's not on their list anymore. He's too good for their list. He's too expensive for their list. So now what we're doing, how can we sell Newcastle? Well, we'll go on to Liverpool. Liverpool might have money to spend. Isak could go there. He probably could. I don't think he will. He's staying where we are. And thankfully, for those who've watched this show for a long time, I was one touting for Paul Mitchell before his appointment. And I think his track record is brilliant. And the fact that he turned Man United down and then accepted our bid shows to me that possibly we'd already done the groundwork, and they end up thinking and crowing about how they stole our sporting director, and we got the one that turned them down. I think this summer will be pivotal for Paul Mitchell to show his football knowledge, his network, his connections. And I think when the window closes and the season starts properly, because there's always 3 or 4 games, isn't there, at the start of the season where the transfer window is still going, I think it'll be seen as a roaring success for Newcastle. It could be, I hate using phrases that's dramatic, but this really could be one of the most crucial transfer windows of our recent history, because if we get Champions League, we're on the cusp of staying there and sustaining Champions League qualification every year. And this, trying to mix everything together, we're talking about Isak. He can't play 60 games a season, it's quite clear. Even if he was fit, he couldn't, because his body, and I'm sure Mitch will give you more medical reasons why, his body's not capable of that buffeting he gets off centre-halves for 60 times a year and still deliver top-class performances. It's the same with Trippier and things like that. I think we'll get a window this summer that will make us all proud. And all the little pieces of the chessboard are in place for it. So I would ignore the noise, and I'm going to try my very best to ignore the noise. We've all got wish lists. I think if you asked us three on here and everyone who's willing to watch us, give us 5 players you'd like to sign, you wouldn't get the same 5 more than 2 or 3 times. And that's because we're all different. But for me, I'm going to bring back a phrase I've used for years: trust the process. I think we've got the right people to get the right people. And it might not be a name that you wanted. It might not be the biggest name, but it'll be someone that will move this squad forward. This is the window now, I believe, where we will advance. And we will say we are here now. And if we can get across this line in the next 4 games and have a successful window, I think we're here to stay. And that's going to put the Frighteners up with so many other teams. And isn't it marvellous?
Yep, it is. John with another question says, I'm worried that without Joe Linton, we're too lightweight in midfield, playing 4-3-3, especially away from home. The Brighton game is vital. Are my concerns misplaced? Joe Linton, a knee injury, unspecified. You know how serious that is really by Eddie. They'll be hoping that he's not too serious and he could be back in contention next week, but I guess time will tell. But yeah, I mean, Joe Willock did come in yesterday. He took a bit of a kicking yesterday in that midfield, which is what happens to Joe Linton normally. But Joe Linton's a bigger lad, as Jack Charlton would say. What's your views on if Big Joe isn't fit next week? You know, would you stay 4-3-3, or do you think Eddie might go for a different formation?
I think Eddie will stick with the formation he trusts and knows, and it's clear that the decision will be between Willock and Maley for me. And I think I might go Maley because he has a bigger physical presence. I'll tell you what I liked about Willock yesterday. Not only did he put up with the kicking quite well, was the first time I've seen him taken off when he looked really pissed off to be being substituted.
Willock.
Willock. Yeah. And I want me players to look pissed off when they're taken off, even if they've had a good game. I want them to look unhappy that they're being substituted. I want them to be
frustrated as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. And I haven't seen that in Willock this season. He seemed sometimes too happy just to trot off. But yesterday he looked like it mattered. And I'm wondering whether he feels that he was trying to lay a marker down to keep that position going forward, because maybe Joe Linton is. It's certainly clear from, again, post-match comments, Joe Linton's been carrying a knock of some description for a while. And he's played through whatever niggle it is he's had, and then felt in training this week that he needed, to get it looked at. And the club have sent him to a specialist, apparently. So you kind of, and that's how they're going to come back with great news that he's available for the next game, or he could be theoretically out for the season. Who knows? I think we've got a squad to cope with it. I've said before, I like Willock when he's in the side, because I think he sometimes brings things out of Isak that other players don't. I think he seems to have a connection occasionally with Isak in and around the box, but didn't see too much of that yesterday. And like I say, I was quite happy to see him disgruntled to come off, because it means he cares, and that's fine. Is he lightweight compared to Joe Linton? Well, I think many people are lightweight compared to Joe Linton. You know, the lad wouldn't have looked out of place in the ring with Eubank and Ben. So,
probably would have won.
Very good chance he would have. But let's see what the results of his tests come back like. And I think I wish Maley had another half a yard of pace. I think that would be, it makes such a difference to him as a player. But I think he looked mature when he come on, and he looked sensible. Never put a foot wrong. Certainly didn't misplace a pass, and looked after the ball. And I think somebody's got an opportunity here. If Joe Linton isn't fit, and it seems to be between Willock and Maley, and I'm comfortable with that. I trust the squad in that.
Okay. What's your views then, Stu, on Willock and the formation for Brighton next week?
Well, to answer the question that Denise asked there, what did I find so funny? I just had a flashback, and I'll give you all a little glimpse of the exciting life I have here in Bury and watching the football with Mrs. P. I was fixing myself some alcoholic beverages, and she says, Joe Linton's not playing. I says, yeah, I know. And she says, she said knee injury. I said, so why is he not playing? Obviously, the Geordie didn't translate. You know, he's got knee injury. So if he's got knee injury, why is he not playing? He should be on the bench at least. So that's why I like to just a childish thing, just to explain why I giggled like a little schoolgirl at my shoulders when there. It just gives a little flashback. But the answer to the question is Willock. For me, it's one of the phrases I've coined this year: horses for courses. Willock plays well on the left, and if it was Bruno that was missing, you would expect Miley to come in. And as it is, it's Willock that's playing. And again, speaking to Robbie One Punch earlier about Miley, the lad's just 18, you know, and look what he's achieved and how his body's still forming. He's 6'2", 6'3" now, and he's still getting better. And what was said to us was it could be that lack of pace, that 1 yard, 2 yards, or split second bit of pace that's missing. That would make him world class. But if we have a very, very, very good player, for me, he's welcome in our squad for as long as he stays in the same shape as that he is. But Willock, for me, plays left midfield, and we don't want to, and I'm going to use one of Mitch's phrases now, we don't want to start putting square pegs into round holes. We've got 4 games, and it's for me, it's critical that the players that are playing are accustomed and used to the positions and the rule that's necessary. You could start moving Bruno to that side and putting Miley in there, and you're making 2 or 3 changes for the sake of changing one. And the whole point of having a squad is, and we're not there yet, but you're going to have 2 people for every single position. And that's what pushes the one that's holding the shirt on, because they know the next person is just as good as them. And if they replace them, they might not get a game for a while, as Mr. Gordon's finding out at the moment. And that's where we need to be. And that then goes back to one of the next earlier questions. That's why, for me, right wing's the most important, because there's no one to challenge, push, or replace Jacob Murphy at the moment. But what I will say in his defence, Jacob Murphy, is when he plays well, the team play well. And if he's off the game, then his role in the team makes the team more harder to function. But he's there on his own. Every other position has at least one replacement. That's the one that hasn't. But for me, Willock definitely plays, and you could see he's up for the game. And it was great, as Mitch just said there, that he looked annoyed to be taken off, because he wants the minutes in his legs. He wants the opportunity, and he did take a bit of a battering. But for me, could be the second controversial thing I'd say. Even if Joe Linton's fit next week, I'll play Willock. I think Willock's more mobile and quicker. And if you look at how Brighton play, they do play quick, fast football where they can pass back, pass around you very quickly. And that would give Tonali a bit extra help. He's not the best tackler in the world, but he can be in a position to slow their progress down. And I think he could get back quicker than Joe Linton. Is he physically fitter? Is he physically stronger? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. But we have to now start looking at the opposition and nullifying their strengths. And I think Willock will have a good game next week. In fact, now we've said this, I'm going to have a better number to score.
Good stuff. Congratulations, as Steve Middlemas says, to Liverpool, Premier League champions. Yeah, look.
That's not what he's saying. PGMOL, he's talking about the referees.
Yeah, Liverpool, PGML champions, yeah. But they've deserved it. They've been a better team over the season. I think the best thing about it for us is that we've been on their tails, like a few other teams. We haven't been mentioned at all, really, by Sky as potential league champions this season. But we've been fantastic. We've done very well. And wherever we finish, it's been a hell of a season for us. We've got silverware. They've got silverware. And either Manchester City or Crystal Palace will have silverware. and maybe an English team will win the European Champions League, and maybe there'll be somebody who wins the Europa League as well. But it's been an interesting season so far. Not over yet, of course. But this programme is a big thank you to Stu and to Mitch for joining us. Been a cracking hour and a half. It's always a good show on a Sunday anyway, but it just flies over. It always surprises me how quickly it flies over. Back tomorrow, 6:30 with the fans forum. As I've said, I am rehearsing this week, so shows will be all over the place with times, but you should still get your 7 shows this week, and we'll be looking at the next few weeks as well with a few pre-records. But thanks, lads. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Stu, can I have a quick prediction of you for the Brighton game? Obviously, other than 3-1.
Yeah, I think it'll be Desmond. I think it'll be 2-2.
2-2. Okay, great stuff. Thanks, lads. Take care. See you soon.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers.